welcome back, guys. So, in part one, we actually talked more macroscopically about the game in terms of the state of women's football, as well as, covering the Vitality FA Cup, as well as, Lauren's story in terms of Leyton Orient's progress with the cup and her kind of opinions on her kind of career, her mental health kind of tribulations as well, and how that reflects a little bit more about, the development of the game more locally here in the UK. But I think now we want to focus part two a little bit more into her personal story, how she kind of got into football and, where things are at right now and where she sees things can progress. So I think first question for me, obviously, you mentioned that you started playing football at 2, and that's obviously, as you mentioned, quite interesting because a lot of people, for example, in your primary school or secondary school would have found that odd. But you obviously fell in love with football very early on.
Yeah, like I say, there's pictures of me. Honestly, I must be like 2-3 years old with one of them soft little footballs kicking it about. And there's pictures of me with like my mum, my granddad, my dad, whoever. And I honestly must have always had a football at my feet from that age until I entered secondary school, really. And yeah, I got into it because I just really enjoyed doing that. And my parents were super supportive, never kind of forced me to, like I said, all the girls in my class would go dance, stuff like that. They were never like, you need to go dance, you need to go and do this. They were like, oh, you like football? Let's find you a football team. And I remember my dad, at first I needed football boots and my feet were like tiny. We had to go around so many shops trying to find these tiny little football boots. He managed to find them. Then I remember him calling around loads of different teams trying to find out, did they have a girls team? And at that, I must have been 7 years old. So yeah, we have one, but not till under 14s, whatever. And we finally found a club, London Girls, and it was not far from my house and took me along. And they were just starting to get a girls team together then. And I came in, and then luckily there was a few other people whose brothers were playing at kind of the linked guys team, and these other girls come in, and then my sister joined as well. So we had this team and we were really good. We were winning everything, like all the county competitions, and it was brilliant. And that was my first team. Then from there, I joined Charlton Athletic Centre of Excellence because that was a local team as well. And I got picked up by them because I was at a like school holiday camp, and it was only me and another girl there. And this guy was watching, and it was like 20 boys, and I was running around all of them. And he was like, what team's she in? Get her down to a trials. And I started playing at Charlton Athletic as well. So yeah, I got involved because I loved it, but having my parents' support and my family's support was massively important in getting me to training and getting me where I wanted to be.
So growing up, we've seen how women's football has developed now, and now there's so many stars like Vivian Miedema and like there's Sam Kerr. Growing up at that time when you were playing football and you were like, finding your feet and getting excited about this game that we all love, were there any role models for you during that period, either in both men and women's football?
I mean, men's football, it was all about Thierry Henry. Me and my family are massive Arsenal fans, so it has to be the thing. So Thierry Henry always on the back of my shirt, celebrating like him, which wow, probably shouldn't have done that. But and then women's football, Leanne Sanderson. So she was at that time at Arsenal and an England player, and she had grown up around where I lived, so there was that connection. And Leanne Sanderson as well was very proactive in engaging with young girls, and absolutely she was my first role model in women's football, my first role model in football in terms of someone I really aspired to be like, because I remember she came to our school, she met our girls club there, and she come to, I think it was one of the Charlton events as well, and just meeting her, hearing her story, it was brilliant. And like I say, even then growing up, a lot of the boys would be making comments about us as girls playing football or whatever, and then to see someone so confident just talking about the game, it was amazing. And all the boys were jealous kind of that she come in and met us, and it was like, yeah, like she was incredible. So it was brilliant to meet her.
That's fantastic. And I think, yeah, from my point of view, going back to kind of what you mentioned in part one, where you were talking about the need for people to kind of change the perceptions, especially at a younger age, where I think kids are more likely going to be affected, the way they think long term, and how that kind of leads into, us fostering a society that allows for people to have different kind of aspirations and wants. So that's, for me, I think, fantastic. And it's lovely to see that. Of course, it starts, from role models like her. And now, of course, you find yourself playing in Leyton Orient. So how did you kind of go from, for example, even dropping out of football to find yourself back playing?
Yeah, so I stopped playing at 16. Like I said, there's a lot of different reasons. My parents did want me to continue, but they were never going to force me to play. They always wanted me to enjoy it. And at that time, I do think 16, I wanted to do other things. I wanted to go out and hang out with my mates. I didn't want to deal with the constant questions about why I was playing. And of course, I wanted to focus on my education as well. Unfortunately, at that time, there still was very, very few professional footballers. And, I was adamant, obviously, I wanted to have a good life for myself where I could support myself and a family as well when I grew up. So I wanted to put that time into my education, and I was successful in getting good A-level grades, and I progressed to University of Nottingham to study politics at undergrad. So that focus was definitely good, and I got what I wanted to get with that. And when I attended, I wasn't even going to take my boots to university, and my dad was like, I think he may have even snuck them in the car. He was like, take your boots, you never know, there might be a football club you can join. And during Freshers Week, so the first week of uni, I was walking around the society's clubs fair, and I saw the football store, so I'll go and have a conversation. And I was telling them the level I've played at, and they were like, well, yeah, you need to come along. So I went along, trialed, I got into the first team, and that support network I got through football was so important for my 3 years there. And I lived with football girls. I actually ran to be sports officer as well, so it's like an elected post. They helped me get that. So I was there for 4 years in total at Nottingham. And throughout that time, the standard of football was really good. We were in like Midlands 1A, and we were in Prem for football and for futsal, so like indoor football. So it was a good standard of football, a fantastic support network, and that's where I really got my love back for the game. And then from that, when I left university, I actually worked in Leicester for a bit. So I started playing for a National League side there, Leicester United. And again, that kind of gave me a taste of, I was so much more confident as a player then, which was brilliant, because I was always quite nervous when I was younger and playing. So I was just playing and enjoying it. And again, it was giving me a bit of taste of, that opportunity to progress, because I was getting my first team starts. I was kind of developing as a player. And then when I left Leicester and come back down to London, I was just looking at different clubs, trying to see what was on offer. I was doing some training as well with some of the girls who are in championship sides over the summer. So that started like really making me want to, get back in and be part of the team and play at a decent level. And I kind of stumbled across Leyton Orient by chance. And as soon as I messaged to a coach, he was like, we got training the next day, come down, get involved. And yeah, that's kind of, it just was from there. As soon as I went down to the training, I knew it was a club I wanted to be a part of. Like, it sounds very soppy, but honestly, like, me and the girls a lot of the time reflect on how great a team we have. It's like an incredible team dynamic, and that's important in the best of times, but considering the stop-start season we've had, it's just been so important. So honestly, mainly chance I saw the club. I was aware of the men's team. I was aware of the standard the girls' academy had been at, because I was kind of interacting with them when I was younger. And then, yeah, it's just been brilliant since I've been there.
Well, I mean, now that you're back and now you're playing at like an FA Cup level, how do you feel that this being, playing football for the love of it, futsal level, where you were sort of finding the love of the game back, and now that you're back and it's competitive and it's starting to be, you're going to grow some more ambition. How do you feel the differences when you make that jump with the players that now around you, like Sam, like Smith, these players who have played, the top level, and the fact that they're there in the dressing room, on the training ground? How does that motivate you, and how does that make you feel like you want to do more?
Yeah, so we have such great makeup in the team where we've got, so I'm 25, so I'm kind of middle in terms of ages. So I've got a bit of experience that I can bring. We've got some girls who are 18, 19, so they're constantly looking and learning, and they're fantastic players. And then you've got, the likes of Scarlett Smith, who was at Southampton previously, and also Heria Collins, who was at Crystal Palace in their setup, so their women's championship. So we've got girls with that sort of experience. So the way it meshes together is brilliant, because we are all just constantly learning from each other and pushing each other to try that little bit harder, go that little bit harder. And I just think as a team, we want to be the best, but it's not in a way that there's just no characters in there that are going about it the wrong way, if that makes sense. We think we can be the best by getting every single player on that team to be the best they can be. And you see it when we do our strength and conditioning sessions. You see it, we've done like a goal setting session, the way people bring in their ideas. So it's just a really positive environment to be around, and having, it's just on the pitch, you see it come together. And I think that FA Cup game is such a good example of it, because there was an amazing goal from Egg, who was again another senior player and brilliant player. And then the goal that Scarlett scored, the build-up play, I want it deep down the pitch, put it out to me. She's incredibly talented, and she's only young herself, so she's really at the start of her career. Great bit of skill, puts the ball in. And if you just watch Scarlett's run to get on the end of that, you can tell she's a class player, and you can tell she's got that experience of playing at a higher level, because it's just so nicely done. And it's having them sort of players in the squad just create that bit of magic when you need it. So it is brilliant. It's brilliant, just a great makeup.
That's fantastic. And obviously you mentioned the kind of stop and start season, but like, how has training been affected, and how are you and your teammates going about training right now?
Yeah, so we've completely stopped in-person training, but we've got a strength and conditioning team. So this is the other interesting thing about women's football, I guess. Our staff for the women's setup are entirely volunteers, and we have incredible volunteers. We've got one of our coaches at the moment is doing his UEFA A license. So in terms of what he could be charging for his time, he's given that for free to our first team. So we have great team of volunteers, and our strength and conditioning team have been doing online Zoom strength and conditioning for us. So we'll have that 2 times a week, really good intensity. And then we also have like a plan as players in between that we have to complete during the week. So we're keeping really sharp, and the strength of having that strength and conditioning offer really showed when we come back from the last lockdown. It was a FA Cup game straight out of it, and our fitness was just evident. We ran for 90 minutes easily. It was like we hadn't had that break. So we're in a really fortunate position with the team we have to be able to keep where we want to be, and be ready for when we finally get back on the pitch. I think the hard thing now is just knowing when that will be. So hopefully sooner rather than later, but whenever it comes, we'll be ready.
Well, just to add in there, like the fact that you have these strength trainings and routines that you have to follow. How do you, as for people who are aspiring to be footballers, but at the same time are studying, how would you say that you juggle your study work and your love for football?
So when I was working, I would say it was a bit harder. And studying now, and particularly doing a master's, you have a lot of flexibility. And in some ways, with the pandemic and having that online study as well, it's given you even greater flexibility to be able to manage the two. So I suppose that is in some ways a positive coming out of it. But yeah, I would say if you're a student, it gets harder when you work. So really appreciate the time you have as a student when you're playing and when you're studying, and schedule the time well, because that's what I've tried to do whilst I'm back studying and playing, is doing individual sessions outside of my team sessions. So I'm really making the most of that time. So it's definitely having a schedule. I think if you're struggling, speak to your coach, get them to help schedule your time, and where you can get them extra sessions in, and how you can obviously stay fit and not overtrain as well. So yeah, and for me, I think a big motivation is my team, and there's players on it that I know are always pushing themselves and are very dedicated. So I kind of just look to them as inspiration when I haven't got any. So yeah, it is challenging. I think particularly when you're working, one of the things I really struggled with would be midweek games. We had a lot of them in the National League. We haven't had any this season, but when I was in Leicester, we had quite a lot of them, and that was a challenging one, because I'd be rushing to leave work maybe an hour early, 2 hours early, whatever, to be able to travel to the game. Then you have to kind of get into game mode, compete, hopefully win, kind of have that jubilation of winning, or the sorrows of losing, get all the way back home, get to sleep, and then maybe I'll have to get into work early the next morning, so I left 2 hours early the day before. So that's when it does become challenging. So yeah, you got to love it to do it. But I think if anyone is struggling with it, speak to your teammates, find out what you can do, speak to your coaches, and yeah, it is challenging, I won't lie.
No, and obviously we understand, like, it's such a kind of different perspective from as you mentioned with the visibility aspect. People see, what it's like, the kind of glamorous life of a footballer, but it's obviously the onus on other kind of aspects of society and the FA to kind of build what can be, careers for, women playing further down the pyramid, and of course for teams that are looking to move up the pyramid and see the fruits of that kind of success come about. I think, what an interesting thing that we see now, of course, is you yourself. You kind of are like a social figure. You have a presence on platforms online, and you can be a role model for women as well, and which I'm sure you are. But how do you take towards, having an active presence on these platforms, especially like in this day and age?
So particularly TikTok, I've got a following on. I decided to set it up during the first sort of lockdown period. I was like, I've got nothing else to do with my time, and I love like making football videos. I'd always be putting on my Instagram, like doing skills and stuff like that. So I done that just for fun, and then I started getting a few more followers, and I've got just over 12,000 now, so I've got quite a nice following on there. But the thing that kind of kept me coming back to the platform, and the thing I loved about it, was like the age. I don't know what age you have to be on TikTok, but the age range is quite young, definitely kind of like 16-year-olds and stuff. So I was always getting a lot of comments on my posts like, oh, it's amazing you play, or you really inspire me, asking questions about, how did you find the team, how did you do this, how are you training in lockdown. So I was like, oh, okay, like this is important, because I'm reaching, like we spoke about earlier, potentially girls who don't have a role model. And when I was at uni, I learned a lot about how fortunate I was to grow up in London in terms of the opportunities I had for football. We would have girls who kind of grew up more in kind of countryside areas, who just had no women's teams, had no really women's role models, and they come to uni and they're like, oh my gosh, you've had all of this. So for, girls who might be quite isolated in that sense, the opportunities around them, and then obviously with lockdown as well, those who are in teams wouldn't be seeing their team. So to be able to kind of give them content and give them advice was something that I really valued. So I think social media platforms are really, really important, particularly for women's athletes. If you're not getting that representation on Sky Sports or in the mainstream, being able to create this network and create this community is really, really valuable. So it's certainly a tool I have enjoyed using. So yeah, that has been good. And of course, yeah, as soon as you get yourself out there, you get people saying, good, this, but a lot of the times I think on TikTok that's coming from like 15-year-old boys. So I've got no problems. But yeah, no, I found it really, really important. I've really enjoyed doing it.
Well, everybody, make sure that you follow Lauren on TikTok and Instagram. Her details are going to be in the description below. Just to round it off, Lauren, you're in the FA Cup. You guys won. From what I know, you're facing Hounslow next in the FA Cup. What are you looking forward to that game? How are you preparing? And at the same time, what are your aspirations for this season and beyond?
Yeah, we're going to the Hounslow game. They're the league above us, so of course it's going to be a tough competition. I'll be honest, they've been struggling a bit in the league above us. So we were, as a draw, it was a nice draw to get. I think it's a game we can definitely go out and win. So we've got our eyes set on really just going out and proving a point, beating a team from the league above and progressing in that competition. Again, being in the position we have with the coaching staff, we have the support staff we've got that opportunity to stay sharp, and I want to see us take advantage of that. And I fully expect our next game back to be an FA Cup game, so we're making sure we're going to be ready for that. And it's an interesting one, because I know not only in relation to the FA Cup, they're discussing, how are we gonna figure this out? How are we gonna sort this competition? They're also having them conversations with regards to the league. So they're saying, if we can't complete games, is it going to be null and void again, or points per games played, or what's that going to look like? So being a realist, we could end up in a position where all we have to play is the FA Cup games, and then you are literally playing to keep playing. So I think that puts you in a really interesting position where, knowing my team, we're going to fight to play any way we can. So I think that's going to give us a real bit of fire going out for them cup games. In terms of the league, I think as a team, we have the opportunity to be challenging for that top spot. Of course, I'm new in this season, and there's a lot of other new players. So our starting 11, I think, is made up of about 6 players who've joined new this season. So we're a very new team. We've gelled well together. So I think we've got the ability to challenge for the top spot should the league continue. But next season, I think, is when we're really going to hit our stride. So next season, I really want to see us winning that league and progressing up to the National League Prem. And long-term ambitions for me, I just want to challenge myself to play at the highest standard I can. And I think, I think I've got a couple more leagues in me to climb up. So I really hope that we've Leyton Orient, and I would love to see us as a club within the next 5 years really challenging to get into the championship. And, I'd want to be a part of that journey with the club.
That's fantastic. So once again, as Mehdi said, you can follow Lauren on all the platforms that she's a part of below. Thank you so much, Lauren, for your time. And we'll see you guys in the next video.
And best of luck for the future.
Cheers.